All right, we continue on the next round. Let's go now to the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. Our buddy Josh Pate, Late Kick Josh, 24/7 Sports, waits for us there. What is up, Josh? How are you?
Well, I'm in that netherworld between media days and then when camp opens, which is where everybody in the building except you takes vacation. So I'm working from home. They don't even know I'm not in the office. No one knows anything around here this week.
I kind of like those days, honestly.
So Josh, we were talking parity and the lack thereof in college football, and I did bring this up. I said, I feel like right now I could get 4 of 5 conference winners, and then I thought back to last year, and I was like, the only conference winner I would have gotten was Alabama, and that was in an upset over Georgia in the SEC championship game. Going into this season, do you feel confident you could get 3 of 5 conference winners?
Confidence, never. Do I feel somewhat sure? Would I brag about it? I would with the Big Ten. No, I wouldn't. Because I think Georgia is enough of a challenger, at least, to Alabama, where I wouldn't just dunk that on you in July or August. I have no clue what's going to happen in the Big 12. How can you possibly have any clue what's going to happen in the Pac-12? So, I mean, Lance, will you let me go to the G5 level? Like, can I just kind of swipe the Sun Belt or something? No, I
go to the American, the best G5. The American's tough this year because everybody's talking about Houston, but Cincinnati's not going to go away. Central Florida should be good. I mean, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is parity outside of winning a national championship in college football.
Well, like you mentioned last year, this point cannot be hammered home enough. Because I think once you get to December, everyone forgets what they were saying in July. But it's important to remember Oklahoma was the preseason #1 last year. Rattler was the preseason Heisman favorite. And it was viewed as such a slam dunk that Ohio State and Clemson were going to be in, that people were mockingly having these segments saying, why are we even playing the season? And neither one of them. In fact, none of those 3 teams even played for their conference title. So last year delivered. I'm not just going to assume that we revert back to normal this year.
Josh Pate is with us, 24/7 Sports at Late Kick Josh on Twitter. He's on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. Excuse me. I'm at Dunaway's mic. It's sympathetic sickness as I'm at Dunaway's spot right here. I believe that we're going to have a 6-0. I think it's both would be 6-0. 6-0 Utah, 6-0 USC, both undefeated either way. Now, I think Utah runs them off the field. But I do think that's the type of start that Lincoln Riley will have at USC, that it's going to be undefeated. Game day will be there. It'll either be, Fox Prime or ABC Prime game. I don't think it's going to be too big of a stage for USC. Do you think I'm crazy thinking that both those teams are undefeated and you actually have a pretty meaningful Pac-12 game?
Do you think it's more likely that we get 6-0, 6-0 USC Utah, or do you think it's more likely we get 4-0, 4-0 Tennessee, Florida? I guess you answered because you think Utah is going to beat Florida. But those are the 2 games that I was looking at the other day. Like, if we could get Utah, USC undefeated, it would give me an excuse to go to basically a Pac-12 game for the first time since we've been doing Late Kick. I've not been to a Pac-12 game yet, and I've looked for every reason to.
Well, you better hurry. You better hurry.
Seriously, very seriously. I just want to frame the credential. But I don't think you're crazy, but what you just said there in that prediction is you do indeed believe Utah is going to beat Florida week 1. Is that right?
I do believe that. I think that's the biggest, believe it or not, Utah is the better team to me than USC. That's the biggest trip up in that scenario is that Utah-Florida game, because when I look at USC, they've got Rice at Stanford, Fresno, at Oregon State, Arizona State, Washington State. I think at Florida is the toughest game, and if you group all their schedules together before they play, that's the toughest game.
Remind me, because I don't have the schedule in front of me. Does Utah play UCLA before that USC game?
Yeah, it's the week before. So that one worries you too at the Rose Bowl?
Yeah, definitely not because of the Rose Bowl. It worries me because I think that UCLA has probably got the, I would say, sneakiest good team in the country. And it's fair to doubt them because there's been no proof of production or performance under Chip Kelly. But yeah, so I think that at the very least, is a challenging game for them. But if that's the case, so here, this becomes the question. If that's the case, we got undefeated. Don't even care who wins the game. How serious is that team being taken on the national level? Is it just the least average amongst an average conference, or for the first time in a while, are we looking at a Pac-12 team and saying, that team could actually be a contender for something more than just their conference title. I'm not used to talking like that about the Pac-12.
Yeah, I think it comes down to how good Florida ends up being if Utah's to win that game, and then obviously how good Notre Dame ends up being if USC was to beat Notre Dame.
So I agree with that. Do you guys feel the same way I do? I think if USC were to start to go on a run, they'd get a lot more national media attention, but people who are potentially going to play them down the road would be less worried than if Utah started to go on a run. Because Utah, they're serious. Like, people know you don't run through Utah. Sometimes you got to run around them to beat Utah. USC, I know good and well, people who have recruited the line of scrimmage adequately would look at USC and expect to cave them like a cardboard box if they ever played them. So it'd be really interesting to see what the national media dynamic versus the actual fan base to fan base dynamic would be if one of those two teams started to go on a run.
See, I love talking random games with Josh Pate 24/7. These are random, it's not SEC stuff, but I do want to get to a random scenario here. He's with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. It is my belief, Josh, that we just lost your video, by the way. I don't know if that was intentional.
Yeah, it's because people who have no business calling me are calling me.
Oh, okay. Well, you send that right to voicemail. Wait, real quick, while Josh fixes that, Redmont Vodka. This is actually helpful to us.
Hey, locally owned and operated. One of the great faces is Charles Barkley from Redmont Vodka, who we just sent out some video on him on what he thinks of the Auburn Tigers this year. Pretty interesting there. Their aim, clarity, and taste, color, and smell. It's vodka perfection. Redmont Vodka made from corn, which not only makes it gluten-free, also provides that smooth finish. It's 8 times distilled, available at your local package and ABC stores, and available in 20 states. Pick up a bottle today of Redmont Vodka.
So this is the time of year where I develop all these scenarios in my head, right? And to me, I think Purdue beats Penn State the first Thursday night. So then I think that Penn State at Auburn game sets up massive for both those coaches. I mean, Harsin, those first 5 games are critical to him. And if you're James Franklin, you're staring at a 1-2 start on the road in a really, really difficult environment to play. In fact, an environment, I agree 100% with you. You said this yesterday. In a big game when Auburn is good, Jordan Hare's worth a touchdown to me.
Yeah, odds makers would laugh at us if we said that. Because, they would tell you, first off, no single player is worth that much unless it's a star quarterback. And I may get on board with that. But if you, we've all been to Iron Bowls and Auburn, Georgia, Auburn LSU games when they've been really, really consequential in the SEC race. I can't explain it or quantify it necessarily. Just ask anyone around those organizations. Weird stuff kind of happens down there, and it feels different. It's almost like from their perspective, they wish Auburn would know their role. Like, I've watched better Alabama teams go in there before and struggle mightily or just lose to Auburn. And it's like that you wish they knew they should just get out of the way, but they refuse to get out of the way. They would call that the Auburn spirit. Their opponents would just call it being a pest. And so that Penn State game in week 3, I was actually less than an hour ago, I was looking at this because that's the same week Oklahoma goes to Nebraska. And it seems like all Nebraska has to do is beat Northwestern in Ireland in week 0. And that could be an undefeated OU, undefeated Nebraska. So that's the great conundrum for me in week 3 of deciding where we're going to be. But I mean, if Penn State loses that week 1 game, and that's a Thursday night game.
That's
so
right.
Penn State, Purdue, that's a standalone game. I think the line on it's 3 right now. 2 things. Number one, the obvious. You just stated it. If Penn State drops that game, it starts unlike last year. Like last year, Penn State had Wisconsin and Auburn in weeks 1 and 3, and they got torched in the box score, but somehow beat Wisconsin in week 1. And so that staved off the panic. Then they edged Auburn in week 3, and everyone thought Penn State was off to the races. Injury ended up derailing them. Well, they could start the opposite this year. What if they drop a couple of games early and all of a sudden the heat's on before September even wraps up for James Franklin? It would be just as fun if they beat Purdue. And you've got Auburn with their first major test. You shift to Auburn, though. Guys, I know the over-under win total is 6 there, but Auburn doesn't have to leave home for quite a while. And that Penn State game is a coin flip point spread game. And that Missouri game the next week, they'll be favored, I would imagine. And the week after, they've got LSU coming in there. That's another short point spread game. There's this world, what I'm trying to say is there's this world where Auburn starts 5-0, and all of a sudden, weirdly, in early October, people are looking at Brian Harsin saying, were we totally wrong about this? And they could still lose 5 games in that scenario, but they could start fast. So As is usually the case in July, we've got limitless possibilities here in terms of hypotheticals.
Okay, well, let me ask you this question. I'm sure it came up in Atlanta, but what is more difficult to figure out, the second best SEC East team or who will come in dead last in the SEC West?
Oh boy. Yeah, it did come up, and I dodged them every single time.
Yeah,
we can't allow it today.
Right.
You've had plenty of time to think about
We
this.
asked the tough questions here in the next round.
Because as you're pondering here, there's a lot of people that think Tennessee is going to have this huge resurgence. There's a lot of people that believe Will Levis. They're believing the scouts out there, and they think Kentucky coming off a 10-win season can be that second best team again. And then in the West, good luck on picking who's coming in last.
When I say this, it's going to sound like I'm down on Kentucky. I'm not down on Kentucky. I think Kentucky's at their best when they're flying under the radar. I don't remember the last time that Kentucky was actually circled as a team that people had legitimately high expectations for, and they followed through on it. And that's not a knock on Kentucky. It's just the reality of where they stand within the greater scheme of the conference. Having said that, though, man, there's still a lot that needs to be seen from Tennessee. I understand the potential, but man, there's still a lot that needs to be seen. Having said that, I would still feel more confident if you made me pick. Like, I would go Tennessee number 2 in the East and probably feel a little more confident in that than trying to pick the last place team. Because the last place team in the West is just going to come down to injury. That's all that's going to come down to. Because there are about 2 or 3 or 4 teams that legitimately could fall to the number 7 spot, and it's probably just whoever gets banged up at quarterback the most.
One thing on that, if for whatever reason A&M was that team at 7-5, how bad is that for Jimbo?
Yeah, that's a bad blank to fill in. It would be very bad, because I'm sitting here thinking about A&M. My thought on them is they're going to be even a little bit better than what the expectation level is. I've seen some folks put them in the top 10, but those same people are not predicting them to win 10 games. So they're thinking, yeah, they're good, but their roster or their schedule rather will eat them up a little bit, maybe 9 wins or whatnot. I think that if you don't get them early, and that would be Miami or Arkansas, someone like that, if no one clips them early and they're able to settle in at quarterback, whoever that's going to be, if they're able to settle in there, they've got the talent roster, they've got the depth. They, I think, have enough perimeter skill this year. And especially if you get guys like Evan Stewart developing as a wide receiver, true freshman, if you give them time, that's going to be a very, very tough out down the stretch. Now, they could even lose to Alabama for all I care. And if they're a one-loss team, you don't have to win that division to be in the playoff hunt. But if you do clip them early, and if they do have more injury concerns and they're sitting there in that conversation, and let me put it this way. If there's even a whiff, if there's even a possibility, if you can even viably ask me in early November, is A&M going to finish last in the conference? There would be legitimate heat on Jimbo Fisher. I don't know if it would be job security heat, but it would be very warranted, legitimate criticism on him at that point, because people keep talking about them like it's their first or second year, just because they people are metaphorically looking at this last recruiting class as if it's the starting point. It's not the starting point. He's half a decade in out there. So that you don't get, there's been no NCAAs. There's no cloud, in other words, that they're trying to emerge from. So it's fair to hold him to the same standard that you do every other major coach who's more than 1 or 2 years in. Jimbo's multiple years in. You don't get to make excuses for him that you don't make for other folks. So yeah, if they don't deliver this year, I don't think a bunch of folks are going to say, that's okay, his time will come. Their time is now. When you recruit like they do and they have the investment level they do, their time is every year. It's no different a standard than Alabama and Georgia.
All right, 247sports.com is where you watch Josh Pate, but you follow him also on Twitter, @LateKickJosh, and get a lot of good stuff there. And he's a friend of the show you guys love when we have him on. It is always fun. Do you have something else?
Well, yeah, I mean, I know you're a storm chaser, so I think it was Tuesday when we were in Atlanta last week when that storm came through. There was lightning on every corner of the perimeter of the city. I'm scared of lightning. I just don't like lightning. I try to stay indoors. There's just something that freaks me out. I really don't want to get struck by lightning. I think most people agree with me. But being a storm chaser,
I think most people would agree with that. Yes, yeah, I think they're all bored.
Do you avoid the lightning?
Are you taking a stand against lightning?
Yeah, Les is anti-lightning.
Anti-lightning.
Yeah.
Okay, anti-lightning. How much time do we have right now? I need to know.
All you want. We own this product. We can do whatever we want.
And we're not under the same FCC regulations. I can tell you a story And okay, I'm going to tell you the story. And
Please
if you
do.
don't like it, then we can dump it out in the post edit. So
Okay.
my biggest fear in life is lightning by 10 miles. My biggest fear. I have crippling fear of lightning phobia, if you will. But I'm also a storm chaser, and so those two worlds converge quite often. So the first part of that is when that storm rolled through the other day, I've been tracking it on radar scope for like an hour because we were going to go live, and we were set up to where I was facing this entire panorama view of downtown. So I could see out the window, but the camera couldn't. And so I had our crew turn the camera around even as we were live. And I just said, forget about football for a second. Just look at this bow echo coming through downtown Atlanta. So, yeah, we were filming that, but I felt safe because I was indoors. However, a week earlier, right here at my apartment complex, this huge line of storms comes through Nashville. And there were people out at the pool because it was a Saturday. And so they thought the only safety they needed to seek was getting under an umbrella. Meanwhile, to show you how petrified, I mean, I'm telling you, I'm petrified of lightning now. To show you how petrified of lightning I was, while they were out there under nothing more than an umbrella, I'm so scared of lightning. If I had to, for lack of a better term, relieve myself, I go find the nearest water jug. I empty that thing and I use the water jug so I don't have to come into direct contact with the plumbing that could end up being struck by lightning. And you only get one penile lightning strike in your life, is what I'm saying. And
I've never even thought about that. Is that a thing?
If it is, I don't want to find out.
I like how you assume you only get one. We don't know this till it's tested, Josh.
I've burned a hot dog on the grill before. So bad.
No, until somebody tests that theory, right, Rockstar? We don't know it to be 100% truthful.
You could be a superhero, man.
That's right. We could, for years, say, no. Josh Pate tested it. It's not true.
How did you become an adult film star? I have a funny story.
Okay.
It only takes once, is what I'm saying. And so, kids, if you learn nothing more, if you don't care about Utah or USC or Purdue or anything else, just heed the lightning, please. Stay indoors.
I agree. Yep. All right, he is Josh Pate with great advice, fatherly advice on the way out of the show. Go follow him at Late Kick Josh. Thank you, Josh. Always fun talking to you.
Stay safe. Appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Take care. Josh Pate with us 24/7 Sports. You guys love when we have him on, and that's why.